Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley, and welcome to Big 12 Insiders Game Day. I am back. I'm working about 50%. Had an infection. Alec, though I will say this, Alec and Cody said they preferred working with Fitz more than they did me. That was a little frustrating. And then Cody so much didn't want to work with me. He's not even here today. We got our man, Chad Brindle, who covers Cincinnati for 24/7 Sports, along with Alec Busse, who covers Iowa State. But yeah, Cody didn't even want to show up today, but I will say I'm feeling better, feeling good about this. So, gentlemen, how are you guys doing this morning?
I'm doing well.
Great.
I'm in my parents' basement sitting in a desk chair that's probably about as old as me. The cushioning is so worn down that my dad has just put a pillow there. So I guess I'm actually sitting on a pillow, which makes me feel like I'm about 65 years old. So happy Thanksgiving. Happy to be with the family and everything that comes with that, because it's a great time of the year.
Absolutely.
Are you gonna pop a Werther's original at some point in time during the show?
See, now I don't know what that means. Which helps bring me down to the 25 that I am. You see what I did there?
That's wonderful.
Me and B know. Me and B know.
Yeah, no, I definitely know. I got Werther's running around all over my house, so I get it. Look, it's a crazy time of year. The Big 12, everybody's still being alive at the end of the year. It's just weird. To me, it's just weird. You would think there would be a little bit more separation in this conference. We're going to break all of that down today and talk about it. Just before we do, remember, everybody, remember to like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. Continue to leave those comments. I appreciate it. But let's get into this. I'll start with you, Chad. The Big 12 with everybody. Now, granted, I don't think technically 9 teams are going to be able to win and get into the Big 12 title. I know they say that, there's scenarios. I'm not a believer in that. But I do believe there's probably 5 or 6 scenarios in which it could actually happen. Is this one of the worst? I don't want to say it's the worst case scenario, because the worst case scenario would be to have a 3-loss champion, which I don't think there's going to be. But the way that it is, we were talking at the beginning of the year about parity, and we've got parity. But is this kind of one of the nuclear reactions for the Big 12 on what has happened this year in football?
You're in it, Alec. Go ahead. I'm on to basketball season, so
I think what we've seen with the Big 12 this year in football is kind of what the league expected and branded itself to be in the preseason. I think we were all in Las Vegas for the league conference media days, and I remember Brett Yormark talking about how exciting the parity was going to be and how the month of November was going to be a race to the Big 12 title and how it was going to be a quote unquote made for TV event. I think for the most part that's become true, but almost to a certain extent, like, it's kind of just become such a mess that it's like really hard for people to almost understand, like, who is who in the conference, like who is really that good in the league, who is capable of winning a Big 12 title, who is capable of even getting there this weekend if certain results go certain ways. And, I kind of have a bone to pick with what the league sent out on Sunday with the conference championship tiebreaker formula thing. Like, if 2 teams are tied, 3 teams are tied, 4 teams are tied thing, that wasn't concise or clear at all in what exactly teams were going to go and not go in those scenarios. If they were going to send something like that out, they should have said, hey, here are the 9 teams that have an opportunity to go to the Big 12 title still, and here's what they need to have happen under each of those teams. But quite frankly, I don't think they did that, because I don't really know if they know what each team needs to go to the Big 12 title, because they're all so complicated. And I would say this for every conference across the country at this point, all of them have too complicated of tiebreakers. And it's because the leagues are 16, 18 teams large, and you don't play enough games against everybody. And within that, you don't play balanced schedules, obviously. So I think the best form of action moving forward to prevent these stupid tiebreakers, Chad, is head-to-head. If it doesn't work, just go to the CFP rankings and let them decide who plays for the conference titles in each league if necessary, because I cover this. I cover a team who's in a position to go to Arlington if things work their way this weekend. And I don't even know what Iowa State needs to have happen to go. I've asked people on the beat and they're like, yeah, we think it's winning in. That's what I think, but like, it's really not. I've asked their SID and he's like, yeah, it's like kind of winning in, but it's not. Like, the fact that they don't know that heading into their game on Saturday is an absolute joke. Because fans don't understand it. We don't understand it. And if we don't understand it, we can't explain it to people. So just make one thing in this sport for the first time in 5 years somewhat easy to understand to a layman casual fan.
Do we need to go back to divisions?
No.
Yes.
No.
I think they.
You don't
I think
think
they
so?
do. Or yeah, I think
No.
they do.
No.
I think we do.
So let me defend why we shouldn't go back to divisions. And I understand why people want to go back to divisions because it makes the tiebreaker situation easier. But to me, when you have conferences that are 16 and 18 teams large and you do divisions within that, you're going to have, either 8 team divisions or 9 team divisions. Within that, you're not going to play the other side at all. So you essentially have 2 conferences within one conference. So what's the point in the Big 12 of there being an East and a West, let's say, or a North and a South, if schools like Iowa State and Cincinnati and Kansas State are never, ever, ever going to play schools like TCU, Baylor, Arizona State, UCF, because the schedule just wouldn't allow it. And beyond that, you're also going to get a situation, I think, where you don't have your 2 best teams matched up to play for a conference title. And in the Big 12, I think that's especially bad because they're not in a position where their top 2 teams are certain to go to the CFP. They don't have the luxury that the Big Ten has, or we presume the SEC having, especially if Texas wins this weekend. And they need to have their 2 best teams playing for a conference title so they have an increased opportunity of getting at least one team into the 12-team CFP. I just don't think
you can still do that. You can still do head-to-head and then go straight to CFP rankings. Like that, there's nothing that prevents you from doing what you're already saying. You're just going to provide a little bit more scheduling normalcy. And it doesn't have to be, equal. Okay, we're 16. There's 8 and 8. You can do 4 and 4 and 4 and 4 and do pods. And then you can allow for scheduling. Okay, you play the 3 teams in your pod, then you get 2 here, 2 here, 2 here.
How do you determine who goes to the league title then after the pods though?
Who's the 2 highest CFP ranked teams? I think you do it just straight up, plain and simple.
Yeah, you got to.
They have to 16 teams just thrown into a hopper. I don't know any way that in a league that doesn't have a power structure yet, like teams haven't separated themselves where this is the team that, we're expecting I don't know how you do it other than coming up with a better scheduling philosophy than what they have. I think pods would do that. And then you say it's head-to-head. And if head-to-head doesn't decide it as a tiebreaker, we go straight to the CFP rankings. The 2 highest rated CFP teams play in Dallas, and we go from there.
And that makes it easy,
right.
And then we don't have this convoluted thing of who's going where and if 2 teams win. I mean, I saw a scenario where Baylor and Tech could be in the Big 12 championship game. I'm like, are you serious? Baylor and Tech? And again, that's nothing against either one of those schools, but how did we get here? Like what would be
Kansas?
How is that?
Kansas is how we got here.
Yes, exactly. Right. I'm just like, how is that beneficial for the league if Baylor and Tech? First of all, you talk about a ratings nightmare. Like, yes, some Texas Tech fans and some Baylor fans are going to watch, but who else is watching that game? And it's just like, man, I can't believe that we're here with this. But at the same time, that we can't just do it the way that we're doing right now. That it is just unacceptable, to be honest with you. I like a lot of stuff that Brett Yarmark does and some of the leadership things that he has done, especially with this whole TBS, TNT, whatever. I like that aspect and some of the leadership things, but this is ridiculous. And it's going to start turning people off, to be honest with you, because they're like, what's going on in the Big 12? They can't even decide their own champion.
Well, and this happened
and that's
last
what it's coming
year.
down to.
And this happened last year, if you remember correctly. The league didn't know its tiebreakers a year ago, and they had to change it so Oklahoma State could get in over K-State because they won the head-to-head.
Correct.
And it's not just the Big 12 that this has happened to. The Big 10 didn't know that Oregon clinched a spot in its league title game after they beat Wisconsin until the Tuesday after the game happened.
Just leak it out like nobody noticed.
Yeah, like honestly, if you were the Big 10, you would have been just better off saying that like results that happened this past weekend when Oregon was on a bye did enough to clear things up for Oregon and say, hey, they clinched a spot. They just made a fool of themselves. And the Big 12 did a year ago. And I'm not saying they didn't do the right thing a year ago by putting Oklahoma State in. I think they did. Like they won head-to-head against K-State. They deserve to go. Right. But that being said, like their tiebreaker is too complicated because there's too many teams that can go. And I think all of us can agree that if you just let the CFP committee decide the top two teams, if a head-to-head tiebreaker isn't available among the teams that are tied, that whether you have divisions, you have pods, or you keep the current scheduling model, which I would be a proponent of myself, that the CFP committee is powerful enough and they already make enough decisions in the sport that might just be the best way to go forward with this. And I would say that for every conference, because I just think it's a real headache what's going on right now. And the fact that the three of us pay attention to this as much as anybody, and we can't explain what needs to happen for each team to get to the conference championship game is terrible for the sport. Like, it's not good.
Yeah, it's silly. Here, let me kind of switch gears on this. Chad, what do you think? Big 12 right now technically is on the outside. I mean, it almost seems like the college football playoff committee is begging to put Tulane in this college football playoff. They got Arizona State one spot ahead of them. It's almost like they're looking at resume with certain teams, but when it comes to Tulane, they're not going to look at the resume. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. They played two Power 4 teams. They lost at home to Kansas State. They lost at Oklahoma, and Oklahoma's not any good. But I guess don't say that to Alabama. But here we are, and I'm like, are they really going to leave the Big 12 out? It almost seems like they're trying to leave the Big 12 out of this thing, or are they at the last minute just going to say, like we've seen the college football playoff committee do, say, well, you know what? Yeah, we understand the rankings. Maybe they lost the game, but we're just going to move them ahead of Tulane anyway because we believe the Big 12 needs to be in the college football playoff. Is that what we're running into here?
I mean, did you come to me because I'm an AAC expert? Is that why you came to me on that? Is this the part where if Tulane gets in that they have to give credit to Cincinnati, like Cincinnati had to give credit to UCF when Cincinnati got into the college football?
Oh man!
Look, I understand it to a point of like Tulane's going to win their conference and be their conference champion, and you know, although I watch out for Memphis because Memphis can beat them.
Correct.
But I think I don't know if like it's just a matter of, like you said, of let's make it look close, right? Like let's make it look like there's some drama in this whole thing. But if Colorado finds a way into the Big 12 championship game and wins, do we really think they're going to put Tulane in over Shadur and Travis Hunter?
Yeah.
Really?
No.
Now, you know, Arizona State, I don't know what to think. I mean, they don't have a lot of juice behind them. This has all been a complete surprise.
Right.
But they've done what's needed to put themselves in this situation and kind of be in the driver's seat. Like, I guess they're the one, if they win, they're in. I don't know, Alec, maybe you could describe it to me, the tiebreaker situations.
I think they are, but I'm not positive. From my perspective, I think that Iowa State and Arizona State are in if they win this weekend.
Correct.
Keyword there, think.
Yes.
Do not quote me on
this.
I think those teams are in if they win. I think, to emphasize again.
We know if all four win, those are the two that are in.
Yes.
we don't know if only 3 win if those are the 2 that are in, right?
Correct.
Like that's where the confusion is.
In my understanding, the reason why I think that if Arizona State and Iowa State win, they're in, is because of if the 4 2-loss Big 12 teams win, that those are the 2 teams that go. So to me,
Right,
reading between the lines, which maybe I shouldn't do in this, is essentially saying, hey, these are the 2 teams that are at the top right now. If they win, they will go.
We know they win the 4-team tiebreaker. We do not know who wins the 3-team tiebreaker. There hasn't been much clarity.
Or the 6-team tiebreaker. Or the 5-team tiebreaker.
or the 9-team tiebreaker.
Yeah, it's a mess. I feel like that the college football committee has just screwed this thing up. It's now they've backed themselves up into a corner because go ahead.
This worked with 4 teams. This isn't going to work with 12. Like they did this little dance with 4 teams where okay, we need to the team that's number 3 needs a big win, so we'll move the team that they're playing this Saturday up to 11.
That's
and then
right.
If they win that game, I mean, it's the Big Ten West dance.
Yes,
that they did every year.
Yes,
and now they're trying that again with 12, and it doesn't work with 12.
Nope.
Like, you have to call it straight down the middle, and they're not doing that. They're doing these little okay, we need to be cute and put this team here and that team there, so that just straight down the middle. And honestly, I think they should stop at 12.
I do.
They're not going to.
I know they're not, but I think they should stop at 12. Like, here's the 12, and if here's the group of 5 that might get in, or here's a conference champion that might get in outside of it. But if you want this to be a little more clear, stop at 12. Going to 25 allows for too much Alex sitting on a pillow. We'll say tomfoolery.
Let me jump in here on the CFP rankings. So I was on a flight last night from Des Moines to St. Louis. And I don't know how you guys have good experiences or bad experiences with like in-flight Wi-Fi, but I could barely watch the thing. It was just breaking in and out. It was not the greatest experience. I might complain to Southwest.
I watched basketball.
Yeah, well, I tried to, and that was just unwatchable as well. So, so they're doing the rankings. I see certain things cuts in and out. Eventually, I just look at the poll when I get home, and I'm like, all right, like, why is Clemson number 12? Like, that was my first thing. I was like, why the hell is Clemson up to 12? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, I kind of get why Alabama and Ole Miss are ranked 13 and 14. Like, I can understand why someone would want to say or believe to say that those teams, if you put them on a field with any of the 4 teams at the top of the Big 12, that they would win. I think all of us can agree that, like, that might be more than likely to happen. But, like, I don't actually know if I think that about Clemson. And back to B's, like, original question in relation to the Big 12 and its possibility of getting left out because of where they have Tulane. I don't think that will happen because you are more than likely going to have, you're almost certainly going to have 2 teams playing for the Big 12 title that are both ranked. And it's probably dumb to assume this, but Arizona State and Iowa State are the most likely, considering what we think we know about the tiebreakers. Specifically, Arizona State, who is the highest ranked Big 12 team. They play one of the worst teams in the conference in Arizona on Saturday. Of course, it's a rivalry game and anything can happen. But for the most part, Arizona has been pretty bad. So I expect Arizona State to kind of cruise to a win in that game. I think Arizona State is well positioned to get into the Big 12 title game. And if they get in there, they're going to play another ranked team. And if they play a ranked team and they win, they're probably going to get into the CFP comfortably. I just don't know if Tulane has enough opportunities left on their resume to get in over a Big 12 team. Now, if absolute chaos happens in the league this weekend and you have, by some crazy imagination, the 2-loss Big 12 teams overall, so Arizona State, Iowa State, they both lose, then BYU gets in and Colorado gets in and Colorado wins the Big 12 and they're a 3-loss team, then Brett Yormark might be sweating on Selection Sunday a little bit. But even then, I do think that the Big 12 will get in. What I am losing confidence in now, after seeing the rankings kind of change, is the league's ability to get that 4th bye. I think that'll be difficult to accomplish. Arizona State is ranked 16th in the poll, and I'm just using them because they're the highest ranked team in the poll. That's 5 spots behind Boise State, who might not actually end up finishing undefeated. They haven't played their best ball the last 2 weeks. But if Boise State ends up finishing undefeated, how much credit is Arizona State really going to get for beating, let's just say, number 18 Iowa State next weekend, compared to Boise State beating a number 22 UNLV? Like, the path, I think, for the Big 12 to get the bye maybe isn't there as much as I thought it was a week ago when I was on here talking about it with you and Cody B.
Yeah, I think they've set Boise up to get that fourth bye. I don't think there's any way that any Big 12 team is going to be able to get past them at this point in time. It's kind of like they're giving more credit for Boise to losing early in the season to Oregon by, what was it, 1 point, than they are to any win that they currently have. You know, it's kind of like the Indiana thing. It's like they're giving Indiana all this credit for not just getting the doors blown off, although they did get whipped pretty handily by Ohio State.
They got spanked. Yeah,
they got spanked. Chad knows.
Yeah, they did. That's what I'm saying. They got beat pretty handily, and then they went into the deep freeze, you know, when they were down, what was it, 31-7, and said, okay, we're just going to play ball control, try to keep the ball away from Ohio State, you know. And so it just, they're giving them credit for a loss that everybody doesn't think is bad. And I'm like, that's not how you're supposed to do this thing. It's supposed to be, who did you play and who did you beat? Not, oh, we played one good person and lost. I don't think that's how it was supposed to go, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I've been watching and paying attention to college football for a long time, Chad, and things always seem to change year to year based on who they want to get in, because they've backed themselves into a corner with this SEC thing. Because how are you going to justify putting in a 3-loss SEC team that doesn't win the SEC? How are you supposed to justify that to realistic people? And I know what you're saying, Alec, as far as, well, you could put Alabama and Ole Miss and say they could beat the top teams of the Big 12 if you line them up. Okay. But you know what? You lined them up against teams like Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. Those teams aren't going to the Big 12 and beating the top teams in the Big 12. They're not just consistently beating them, and they lost.
And that's why I was really frustrated with what the committee did last night, because I thought that Alabama and Ole Miss would be closer to where Arizona State and Tulane and maybe even to a certain extent South Carolina were going to be ranked. But you also have to look at it from the perspective of, like, the results are the results. Yeah, like, you kind of have to look at it, like, in a certain sense that, like, the results are the results. And, like, Alabama and Ole Miss probably should be ranked ahead of South Carolina because they beat South Carolina.
Correct.
And so they kind of have to be ranked ahead of South Carolina. And then it's like, all right, like, well, if you're slotting South Carolina at 15, then that means ahead of them at 14 and 13 need to be the Rebels and Crimson Tide. And I know you could come back at that and say, well, why is K-State then ranked behind Tulane when Tulane lost to K-State? I would just say that I think that's because K-State has 3 losses at this point, and one of them is to, a bad Houston team.
Correct.
So then you could say, well, why
did them in?
Yeah. So then you could say, well, why is K-State being punished for a bad loss to Houston and Alabama or Ole Miss isn't being punished for a bad loss to Oklahoma or,
Kentucky.
And to that, I would just say Alabama and Ole Miss have really good wins that K-State doesn't have because they each beat Georgia. And I think that that's just like how this all has kind of worked out. And it's an absolute mess this year across the entire ranking system because, like, there's so many 2-loss teams, there's so many 1-loss teams. I think separating them has become really challenging and difficult for the committee. And for the most part, I think they actually do a pretty good job. But yeah, I just think that for the most part, like, the way things have kind of worked out, like, it's kind of put them in a tough spot for ranking certain teams in certain places.
Yep. Nope. What I would hope that happened, I think would be absolutely hilarious, is if Georgia lost to Georgia Tech. If Georgia gets beat by Georgia Tech and they have 3 losses because they're going to the SEC championship game, and then they go and they don't win. Well, even if they do win, well, no, if they win the SEC, they're going to be in. They're going to put them in. But if they lost to Georgia Tech, then what? Then what do you do? Where do you slot Georgia at that point, and where do you rank them based on what their season? Because at some point you have to say the results have to matter. Because if the results don't matter, then why the hell are we playing the football games, Chad?
Wouldn't that be the worst thing to happen, though? They lose to Georgia Tech. They win the SEC. They get in. And then everybody from here on out says it doesn't matter how many losses.
Doesn't matter how many losses.
SEC.
Doesn't matter who you play.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't matter any of that. So
the funniest possible outcome this weekend is Texas A&M beats Texas and Kyle Field and the rivalry getting together for the first time in 13 years. And then A&M goes to the SEC title game and loses to Georgia. And then the committee puts in Texas over Texas A&M. That is the funniest potential outcome. Because then you're saying to the A&M people,
doesn't matter.
The results literally don't matter. And by the way, you're worse than your biggest rival that you call like tipsy Texas or whatever because they just drink tea and they're, everything that Big 12 fans have said about Texas for the last 10, 15 years.
Yes.
That
and
is
not only that, because Texas hadn't played a tough schedule either. They haven't played anybody that's any good. And for that to happen, oh my God! If I'm an A&M fan, you talk about the nightmare. That would be the absolute nightmare. But Alec, I'm telling you right now, if that were to happen, they would 100% do that. They would 100% do it.
I do think if Texas loses a close game to A&M this weekend, I think they'll still probably be in the top 10, 11 of the polls. Even if A&M is ranked, A&M's ranked like 20th, I think because it's a road game, I think Texas would still be ranked in the CFP. And I just can't imagine them falling behind so many teams that have 2 losses already. But I don't know. We'll have to see how it all plays out.
Brutal. Real quick.
I just think that'd be funny.
No, it would be hilarious. Real quick before we move on, what did you guys think, Chad, about what Chris Kleiman said about the Big 12 meeting and just say, hey, if you're going to reward this other conference, and he's talking about the SEC for only playing 8 conference games, we need to start just playing 8 conference games and just schedule whoever the hell we want and go that route because 9-3, 10-2 looks better than 9-3. I kind of think he's right. I don't like it for fans because it would suck playing another bad football game. But what are we trying to do? Is the goal to get to the college football playoff or is it not? And if it is, then do we just need to do that? And until they make a rule, which they would do that at that point, they'd make a rule that you got to play 9 conference games. But
you think they're going to tell the SEC what they have to do?
Yep.
They don't have that kind of juice.
Yeah, you're probably right. The
SEC will just say, no.
Yeah.
We've decided on 8. We're playing 8. What are you going to do about it? Kick us out?
Right.
So, look, I wouldn't mind a little Sunbelt Saturday in November.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is, man.
A little refresher.
I just think if the conference is looking out for the conference, I think at some point you just have to say, why don't we just copy what they're doing and just deal with it from there? And they can try to say, well, your conference isn't good enough. Yeah, nobody cares about that. Just go 10-2 or whatever it may be, win the games, and then let the chips fall where they may, and just see what happens. I think I loved what he had to say. Again, it would suck for the fans, but I think the fans would rather say, you know what, we got another bad football game, or we're playing a one less conference game, and my team gets into the college football playoff, than to play another conference game and not get into the college football playoff. I think fans would welcome that trade-off in a heartbeat. That's just my opinion.
I agree.
I would just say it's not going to happen. Like, Fox and ESPN did not pay the $30 to $35 million a year to the league schools to broadcast 8 league games instead of 9. Like, we know that they don't value the Big 12 as much as they value the SEC or the Big 10. And part of that is obviously because they don't have, the ratings of those leagues every weekend. I mean, Indiana, Ohio State had 9 million viewers on Saturday. And Indiana had 9 million viewers. Indiana football. That's nuts.
It is.
And listen, I know that like Colorado, I think KU had about 6 million. That just doesn't seem as like, that's so much more like the Dion effect to me than anything else, which is a real thing. Like, you can't take away the 6 million viewers, but I guess the television partners didn't pay to broadcast 8 games. They paid to broadcast 9 conference games. And, I think I said this last week on the show when this came up to us too, was I'm a huge proponent of the SEC and the ACC because they always get left out of this 8-game conference schedule thing for whatever reason. I don't know why, but they always get left out of it because they only play 8 games. I'm a proponent of each of them playing 9 conference games. I think there needs to be a scheduling balance across the sport that doesn't currently exist. But as far as the SEC and I guess to a certain extent the ACC goes too, like those schools shouldn't agree to go to 9 games unless they're going to get more money to do it, because that's how business works. Like you don't just give your partner something without anything in return. So like I don't blame the SEC or the ACC for being at 8 conference games if they don't get more money to do it. And also last week when Greg Sankey put out his spreadsheet with the strength of schedule things, first of all, hilarious that he did it. Second of all, even more funny that he did it considering what happened on Saturday after he posted it. But what's also really funny about it, and I think what certain people in responses and quote tweets to it were saying was that you propping up your strength of schedule is really stupid because you only play 8 conference games. Well, they had 6 of the top 15 and all of the top 6. If they go to 9 conference games, everyone who's talking about the SEC teams have a greater strength of schedule, so they deserve more of a mulligan than teams in other conferences. That becomes even more true because you add another game. Now, you also add another loss for all of those teams because someone has to lose the games, but the top teams, their strength of schedule goes up. So it's like, it's almost for all the people in the Big 12 or the ACC or the Big 10 who complain about the SEC only playing 8 league games, it almost would hurt your argument more if the SEC moves to 9 games, because what does the SEC tout? Their strength of schedule, their strength of record, because they generally have the deepest, best top of the league. Now, it's up for debate if that's true this year, but that would all increase most years. So I don't think, like, if you're a Big 12 fan, you actually want the SEC to go to 9 games because it just hurts your argument against them.
I mean, it could, but I also think that some of these teams would also have an extra loss.
They would. They would all have an extra loss.
That's what I'm saying. They'd have an extra loss, and then you can't justify. Well, you can tell me your schedule is tougher, but you can't win. And if you can't win the games, then what difference does it make? You know, play all these tough teams. At some point, you got to beat them. You can't just lose and say, "Oh, well, yeah, we played a tough schedule and we lost 4 of the games." Well, okay, great. We lost 4 of the games. How about winning? And I don't know. That's just me. I didn't want to get too stuck on that. I was just a question or wanted to know what your all's opinion. And then we're going to move on real quick here. I wasn't even going to bring this up, but a lot of people asked me this question yesterday based on what Coach Prime had to say. And I think he's got a point about Travis Hunter. He's up for the Bednarik Award, the Maxwell Award. He's going to be up for the Heisman, but not the Jim Thorpe. And you can talk about the Maxwell and all that stuff, but my thing is, if you're up for the Bednarik Award, which is the best defensive player in the entire country, you're a finalist for that. How is it possible that you're not a finalist for the Jim Thorpe Award? I just don't see how that translates at all.
I have the perfect case study on this, Big B.
Go ahead.
2021. Cincinnati had the best secondary in America.
Yeah, easily.
Ahmad Sauce Gardner was the best defensive player in America.
Mm-hmm.
He did not get nominated for the Thorpe Award. And instead, his teammate, Kobe Bryant, won the Thorpe Award. So the running joke at Cincinnati that year was, here is Kobe Bryant, Jim Thorpe Award winner, and here's the best cornerback in the country, Sauce Bryant, or Sauce Gardner. So this is apparently like what I gathered from that is the Thorpe Award, their criteria is a little different. Like it's not just straight up because when you kind of press people about it, well, Sauce didn't have the stats. You know why Sauce didn't have the stats?
It's
stupid enough to throw at him.
Exactly.
Nick Saban went into the college football playoff with Jamison Williams as his number 1 wide receiver. They threw it through him twice for -1 yard.
There you go.
Nick Saban was like, nope, I don't even want to enter that into the chat. What would happen if we try picking on Sauce? So we're just not going to do it. He did not win the Thorpe Award.
I have a story about the Thorpe too. So 2022, this was a year after I finished covering Illinois after I graduated from school there. Still paid pretty good attention to it. Still had a lot of friends who covered them. Devin Witherspoon was a first-team All-American corner for Illinois that year. They won 8 games and ended up being a number 5 overall draft pick to the Seahawks. And he's having a great career right now in the NFL. He finished second for the Thorpe to TCU's Trey Tomlinson, who I saw play twice that year. And I watched as much of Illinois as I could that year. Similar thing to Chad. No one threw in the direction of Devin Witherspoon during that 2022 season. Trey Tomlinson got more opportunity to make plays on the ball, and he ended up winning the game, winning the award in 2022. So I think it's just a situation of like the positional award things kind of suck. Like in the preseason, the award watch lists are like 150 players long.
Correct.
And then at certain schools feel like they have a player that breaks out that is having a really good year, and they try and get him added to the award watch list in the middle of the season, and they don't get that granted. Like the other thing is like not enough people know the names of each individual award, like and what position they go to. Like general fans don't. It's kind of like hockey. Like no one actually knows what any of the award trophies are for hockey. Now diehard hockey fans do, but like Conn Smythe don't know what it means. Okay,
correct.
That's also the only one that comes to my mind off the top of my head. I think that's the MVP trophy. I don't know if either of you guys are hockey fans, but to me, it's just
Gretzky trophy, right?
No, I don't see now. B, give us some trivia questions. I know you're a big hockey guy.
I have no clue.
Let's do that.
Just call it that. The great one. That's all I know about hockey.
But yeah, I think here's the thing about Travis Hunter. The kid's got a chance to be an All-American on offense and defense. He's going to win the Heisman. Okay. Like Ashton Genty's had an incredible year. He's doing things that we've seen before. That was a long time ago that we saw it, and it didn't happen in my life. But like legitimately nobody is doing what Travis Hunter is doing right now. No one has ever done what Hunter is doing. He's going to win the Heisman, and that's way more meaningful than winning the Thorpe.
Yeah, no, you're right. One of the thing about Genty is, first of all, he went to high school. Lone Star is literally about a minute from my house. But the thing about it is that voters sometimes get nostalgia, and they're going to compare Genty to Barry Sanders. Nobody thinks that he's Barry Sanders, and I believe that will hurt him. Now, granted, I think that Travis Hunter should win the Heisman, but I just look at it from a more realistic standpoint and in a personal standpoint where people get nostalgic and they're going to say, well, hold on, you're going to compare him to Barry Sanders. There's no way that this kid is Barry Sanders, so we're not going to vote for him because he's not as good as Barry Sanders. And I'm like, okay, is that really how you should be voting on the Heisman based on if you think he's as good as somebody that played 35, 40 years ago? I don't think that's the way it should work, but I think that is the way they work. We've been around this world long enough to understand that's how people are, and people are going to vote that way. I don't think it's right, but I love the point that you made, though, Chad, talking about Sauce Gardner, the best player in the country, guy on his team, not as good, wins the Thorpe Award playing the same position. I'm just like, man, this is insane, man. Just crazy.
You know why? That's why Kobe got all the stats, because nobody threw to Sauce. They got to throw to somebody.
They got to throw to somebody.
Indiana did the funniest thing that year when they played Indiana in the non-conference is Sauce pretty much didn't travel. He just stayed boundary number 1 corner. So Indiana put their entire offense to the field, and they would put like a second string tight end on the boundary, and they had Sauce cover the second string tight end and ran their entire offense. We joke always about cutting the field in half. Right. Indiana was like, no, we're not even running routes over there. That's how good Sauce was. By the way, Wayne Gretzky Trophy is awarded annually to the champion of the Western Conference playoffs in the Ontario Hockey League. And that's been going on since 1999, for anybody that's wondering.
So not even part of the NHL?
No, there's no Wayne Gretzky Trophy in the NHL.
Huh.
I thought that was the Stanley Cup MVP thing. By the way, Conn Smythe, according to Google, does go to the MVP.
Gotcha. It's weird. The great one. No award in the NHL. That's wild. Well, guys, let's get to this, man. Upset of the week. Look, is there really an upset of the week when it comes to the Big 12 anymore? I'm not sure that there is. look, there's a lot of football games, meaningful football games this weekend, but I don't think there's really that many great matchups when you just look at it. Maybe one, Iowa State, Kansas State, which I picked as the spotlight game of the week, but upset of the week. I'll start with you, Alec. Who do you got? Who's on should be on upset alert this week?
Yeah, I think looking at the various lines this week across the conference, there's not one that immediately jumps out to me. I guess I don't know. None of these are very intriguing. I guess I would say West Virginia plus 3.5 on the road at Texas Tech. One of the podcasts I listen to, they kind of joke about having like a Big 12 3.5 point spread coin, and when it's that, you just flip the coin. It's like, all right, whichever side it comes up, that's who we're picking. None of the games or the matchups this week really leave me too convicted, but I guess I just feel like West Virginia isn't marketably worse or playing any worse than Texas Tech right now. So I guess I would just go with West Virginia on the road at Tech. I don't know about you, Chad.
This is strictly weather related. I do think Cincinnati beats TCU, and I base this off of. I saw SMU come up here a couple years ago when Sonny Dykes was their coach. It was November. It was cold.
The Tanner Mordecai game.
I think they ended up with like 175 yards offense because every one of their the first play, I think the first pass of the game, one of the receivers got rocked, and the rest of the game they looked like T-Rex trying to catch the ball. They didn't want anything to do with it. They wanted to get immediately back on the bus, get back to the airport, and get the hell out of Cincinnati. It's going to be like in the 20. The high is 30. So the game kicks off at 6:00. I think the low is supposed to get down to like 16. So you're going to see the temperatures falling through the 20s. I think Cincinnati covers 3 at minimum. I think there's a good chance they win. I think worst case they cover 3.
Homer pick.
I like it. I like
that. I've been against Cincinnati for weeks.
Yeah, I like that pick. Here's the one that I like is I like Baylor plus 1.5 at home against Kansas. Kansas coming off an emotional win. I know Kansas is playing as good as anybody, hell, in the damn country. But Baylor's won 5 games in a row. Baylor, they've figured some stuff out in games at home. Everybody's talking about how good Kansas is playing. Maybe they've read a little bit of press clippings. I don't know. It would seem that they wouldn't, the way that they lost some of these football games, and they're trying to get to a bowl game. But I'm going to pick that as the upset of the week is Baylor plus 1.5 at home over Kansas. Then we've got our lock of the week, which there's a few of these on here that I think are pretty much locks of the week. I'll start with you, Chad. Who do you think is one of the lock of the week this week?
I'm tempted to go Colorado, Oklahoma State, but 16.5 is a big number.
A lot. Yep.
So but I don't love that. I think I would be tempted to take the points there. I'll go Arizona State by 8.5 over Arizona. That Arizona offensive line is just an unmitigated disaster. Their defense is not good. Kenny Dillingham, I feel like he's becoming the Danny Hurley of college football. He loses his mind in like just ridiculous ways every week. And I'll go Arizona State with everything on the line. I'll lay the 8.5 and take the Sun Devils.
Let me break in here before you go, Alec. Let me ask you guys, what the hell was Kenny Dillingham doing at the end of that BYU game? Like, what exactly was he trying to get accomplished there at the end? I've never seen anything like that. Again, I've been watching football a long time. You're at the 9 and you end up the last play of the game from the 47. I'm like, what are you doing? What is going on here? I've never seen anything like that before in my life. Never.
Yeah. I'll jump in and respond to that. That happened, and I remember saying, I have a buddy who went to school at ASU. I was like, he needs to just punch this in. Like, he's outsmarting himself on this play. Like,
just win the game.
Score. Like, if you score another touchdown, a field goal would have put them up 8. So even that puts you up essentially 1 full possession. A touchdown puts you up 2 possessions with very little time remaining, less than a minute. So, like, the whole clock game that these coaches have started to instruct their players to follow, and they have followed themselves, is almost just like too much. Arizona State went way too hard to to try and do the clock thing. And to a certain extent, like Ohio State at the end of the Indiana game did the same thing. Like Travion Henderson had that big run up the middle and he slid at the 2 or 3 yard line. It's like, there's too much time left, Travion, for us to just like take 3 knees and end this. So then Ohio State is essentially forced to, do what they did with Will Howard, which I actually had no problem with. If you have a problem with it, stop it, Indiana. But yeah, to me, like, the way I explained this to someone yesterday was like, if football in its dumbest and most lamest terms is a game of territory, you're trying to capture your opponent's territory and reach your opponent's end zone. If you do that, you win, right? Like that is essentially what the game of football is. And Arizona State essentially just sacrificed 40 yards of its own territory at the end of the game for no reason. When they could have just punched it in. Like, and it's not like they struggle to run the ball.
Correct.
Like they have arguably the Big 12's best running back. And now I get it. Like you're afraid of a fumble. You're afraid of something bad happening, a scoop and score fumble that's returned 90 yards. I get it. Fine. But like, I watched the Bears lose to the Packers because they thought that the game was over and they had their field goal blocked. Like every yard matters in football. Every play matters in football, essentially. And he just kind of punted on that. All that being said, put your forks up, boys. Arizona State's going to the Big 12 title game because they're covering 8.5 against Arizona.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Arizona's bad. Bad.
Yeah, Arizona's bad. That's a bad football team. I was looking at this. I'm going to go BYU.
So bad that somebody rated them below Oklahoma State in our most recent poll, I believe.
That's true. Stephen Leonard.
Really? Oh, I didn't notice that. Yikes.
Which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I had some fun with it in the group chat.
I'm going to take BYU plus or minus 13 over Houston. I don't think BYU controls its own destiny at this point. At least, again, I don't think. But who knows? But I think they'll come back. Look, 2 more yards of arm strength. They win that game against Arizona State, because they completed that pass, which again was crazy. And they fought back. I think this is a game they get right against Houston. Houston's fought all year, won some games. People didn't think they would, but it's Saturday night in Provo. It's probably going to be cold again in Utah. In Houston going up there, this one could get ugly. So then they got the spotlight game of the week here. Kansas State going to Iowa State. One of the better games of the day, to be honest with you. And I'll talk to you a little bit later, Alec. We'll get on the spotlight game of the week here, but I like this football game. I think Kansas State maybe have gotten a little – I think both teams kind of got themselves right last week. It's going to be tough. It's going to be cold, another cold game. But I like this football game. Who do you like in this one?
I don't know. Who do you like?
I kind of think I like Iowa State to win the football game. And the reason I like Iowa State to win the football game, I just think Iowa State, that it's at home. Kansas State, again, has not played great on the road. I think Iowa State understands if they win this game, they'll get into the Big 12 title game. Kansas State does not control their own destiny. That's going to matter. These things matter to kids. Look, I was a player at one point in time 100 years ago. You understand, you get some things figured out in your mind. And when it's, hey, I'm playing this football game, and even if we win, we can't go. Or if we do win, we can go. That just makes a difference to me. And it just does. And I think Iowa State's going to have that advantage, and I think they win a football game.
Yeah, I think I was
them back to.
Go ahead.
After seeing them back-to-back weeks, I think Kansas State's playing better, or at least looked better to me. Iowa State,
definitely
Cincinnati
looked better against Cincinnati than Iowa State did. That's true.
Yeah.
That's for certain. I think I've said since early in the year that I think that Iowa State is one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the conference. I think K-State's in the group of like top 5 to 6 best teams in the league. To me, it's going to be a really close. It's going to be a really competitive game. If you look at the last 2, it's kind of funny how they've played out. You had a 10-9 game in Ames back in 2022 that K-State won, affectionately dubbed the Malik Knowles game by K-State fans, despite him, screwing up. It's rare that you have a game named after you when you screwed up and your team still won. So congrats to Malik Knowles for that. That's a good honor. The last year's game, obviously, maybe the weirdest game I've ever seen in my life. Iowa State wins 42-35 in a massive snowstorm that has 4 to 6 inches of snow on the ground, and I think it'll be a close competitive game. Chad talked about the weather impacts on the Cincinnati game against TCU. I think you're going to see similar impacts on the Iowa State game, where it's a high of 25 on Saturday, and the temperatures are going to be in the upper teens, low 20s around kickoff and throughout the contest. I think Iowa State's a better team. I don't know if they necessarily cover, but if K-State wins, I certainly won't be shocked.
I'm going to take K-State.
K-State fans are going to be mad at me because I picked Iowa State. They're going to be mad at me, but that's okay. They could be mad at me.
I had K-State winning the conference. So my only shot is that they win this game and find a way to get to Dallas so that I look smart, and I like to look smart. So I'm going to go K-State.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good football game, I think. Looking forward to it. Look, guys, I want to thank both of you for showing up today. Really do. I'm on the mend. I don't know if you all can tell. I've been sweating great the whole time. When you're on antibiotics and you got an infection in your face, it makes things a little more difficult. But I appreciate you all giving me the time today. I really do, man. And you guys have helped. I'd like to say this on the air all the time, and I still do. You guys have helped me tremendously. You know that I'm not a journalist. I'm doing the best that I possibly can. So I appreciate you all giving me the time. And I'll be honest, man, I can't wait for this basketball season to get going. I'm looking forward to it. I know you guys are hating life right now because it's super busy. But I am looking forward to basketball season. I know football's not over, but I really am looking forward to basketball season. It's going to be a great. Hell, it's been a great last couple of days for the Big 12 in general. And we're just getting started. We're just getting started. So I appreciate you guys giving me the time, man. I really do.
Appreciate you having me. It's always a lot of fun.
All right. So thanks, everybody. Again, we will be back soon. I don't know next week. We'll probably have one again next week. The Big 12 title, and we'll get it all figured out. So we appreciate you all giving us your time. Thank you for showing up. Look forward to seeing you guys in the comments. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.